The big issue at the moment is how much importance to attach to targeting low inflation. The ECB seem to maintain that low inflation is very important, and they seem willing to stick to an inflation target rather than pursue other goals such as reducing unemployment and increasing the rate of economic growth. The ECB will argue that low inflation is very important for maintaining long-run economic stability and encouraging investment. And if they allow inflation to increase, it will reduce the credibility of a central bank and make it more difficult to control inflation in the future. However, other economists are much more critical of this approach, and they say that because the ECB are targeting inflation, they are losing sight of the more pressing problems, which is the second double-dip recession and mass unemployment, which is around 10% for the whole Eurozone, but in some parts of Spain and Greece, much higher. In Greece, for example, youth unemployment is over 50%, in a similar situation in Spain. And many countries in the south of Europe have been forced into austerity policies, which is deflationary fiscal policy, to reduce budget deficits. And this is causing a recession, falling demand and rising unemployment. And what these countries really need is expansionary monetary policy. They need some kind of boost to domestic demand to make the austerity policies less damaging to the economy. And unfortunately, the ECB are very reluctant to target higher economic growth, even if it means allowing inflation to increase above target. Now, if you compare that to, say, the United Kingdom, the Bank of England were much more willing to tolerate an inflation rate above target. In 2010-2011, inflation was quite considerably above the inflation target of 2%. But the Bank of England argued at the time that this inflation would be temporary due to cost-push factors, and that given the state of the output gap and high unemployment, it was more important to tolerate high inflation and target higher growth. And I think that generally speaking, in this regard, the Bank of England were correct, and I don't think they lost any credibility by allowing inflation to be above target in the middle of a recession. And I feel that central banks really have to give dual priority to both economic growth and low inflation. And to target low inflation when you've got mass unemployment is to kind of miss the obvious problem. And unfortunately, it's causing a lot of economic hardship. And given the constraints of the Eurozone, which make growth more difficult, the ECB stance is going to be a drag on economic growth and attempts to reduce unemployment. So what I feel the ECB need is a willingness to tolerate higher inflation and to target higher nominal GDP. And without this, it would be very difficult for the Eurozone economies to recover and reduce their debt to GDP ratios.